My dear, welcome, welcome, welcome to the story they never wanted you to tell. The one where you stop being the victim and start being the villain of their nightmares. The one where their little game backfired so spectacularly that they're still trying to figure out what hit them. Because let's be honest, they didn't just betray you. They awakened something they weren't prepared to handle. You thought they were your people. You thought those late-night conversations meant something. You thought the way they looked you in the eye and said, "We got you," actually meant they had your back. But here's what you didn't see coming. While you were out here being loyal, being real, being the friend who shows up, they were busy writing a completely different story behind your back. You remember that moment, don't you? When the energy shifted, when the group chat got a little too quiet, when the invitations stopped coming, when the inside jokes became weapons designed to cut you out, when your name started tasting different in their mouths, not like admiration anymore, more like something bitter they had to swallow just to spit out later. They didn't just talk about you. No, that would have been too simple, too obvious. They performed a masterclass in strategic sabotage. They studied your weaknesses like a PhD thesis. They memorized your insecurities like prayer. They turned your trust into their ammunition and your vulnerability into their entertainment. While you were sleeping peacefully, thinking you had real friends, they were wide awake, plotting your social assassination. And you felt it, didn't you? That slow poison spreading through your veins. The way conversations would stop when you walked into the room. The way they'd exchange glances that felt like daggers. The way your achievements suddenly became threats that needed to be neutralized. The way your light made them squint so hard, they decided darkness was more comfortable. They were whispering, weren't they? Not the good kind of whispers. Not the excited gossip about crushes or dreams. No. These were the surgical whispers, the kind that dissect your character with the precision of a scalpel, the kind that take your greatest fears and turn them into their greatest weapons. They were building a case against you while pretending to build memories with you. You caught the micro-expressions, didn't you? The way their smiles would freeze when you walked in. The way their laughter would die in their throats when you tried to join the conversation. The way they'd suddenly remember urgent phone calls when you wanted to talk. The way your presence became an inconvenience they had to manage rather than a joy they wanted to celebrate. But here's the thing they never calculated. You were absorbing every microaggression, every fake smile, every congratulations that felt like condolences. You were taking mental notes while they thought you were just taking their word for it. You were building your case while they were building their lies. You were preparing for war while they were playing games. You see, they mistook your kindness for stupidity. They confused your patience with weakness. They thought your silence meant submission. They had no idea they were dealing with someone who was quietly becoming dangerous. Not the loud kind of dangerous, the strategic kind. The kind that doesn't announce their moves. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that strikes without warning and leaves no fingerprints. They thought they were so clever, didn't they? The way they'd plant seeds of doubt about you in other people's minds. The way they'd twist your words into weapons. The way they'd take your vulnerability and turn it into entertainment for their group chat. They thought they were writing your ending, but they had no idea they were just writing their own irrelevance. Because while they were busy building their little fortress of lies, while they were busy convincing themselves they were the victims, while they were busy rewriting history to make themselves the heroes, you were busy doing something they never saw coming. You were watching. You were learning. You were evolving. They thought they knew you. They thought they had you figured out. They thought you were the type to crumble under pressure, to beg for explanations, to chase after people who clearly didn't want you around. They expected tears, drama, public breakdowns, desperate phone calls. They were waiting for you to give them the satisfaction of watching you fall apart, so they could point and say, "See, we told you they were unstable." But what happened next? What you did next? That's where their little script fell apart. That's where their calculated cruelty met your calculated genius. Because while they were busy congratulating themselves on their betrayal, while they were busy dividing up the pieces of your reputation like vultures, you were busy doing something they never saw coming. You went quiet, not broken quiet, not defeated quiet, strategic quiet, the kind of quiet that makes predators nervous because they can't locate their prey anymore. You disappeared from their radar not because you were hiding, but because you were evolving. You were shedding the version of yourself that needed their approval, like a snake sheds dead skin. And they started to panic, didn't they? Because silence from someone they hurt isn't relief, it's preparation. It's the calm before the storm they invited with their own hands. It's the sound of someone who stopped explaining themselves to people who never deserved the explanation in the first place. You see, they thought betrayal would destroy you. They thought cutting you off would leave you isolated and desperate. They thought removing their fake friendship from your life would make you realize how much you needed them. But what they didn't understand is that sometimes the best thing people can do for you is show you exactly who they are when they think you're not looking. While they were busy celebrating your supposed downfall, while they were busy building their little echo chamber of lies, while they were busy convincing themselves they were the victims in a story where they were clearly the villains, you were busy building something they couldn't comprehend. You were building immunity. You were building walls they couldn't climb. You were building a version of yourself that didn't just survive their toxicity, it transformed because of it. The funny thing about betrayal is that it's supposed to break you, but sometimes it just breaks you free. Free from the illusion that these people were good for you. Free from the exhausting performance of being smaller than you are. Free from the prison of caring what people think when those people never cared about you at all. And now they're watching from the sidelines, trying to figure out how someone they tried to destroy is out here thriving without them. How someone they cut off is more connected than ever. How someone they tried to isolate has become magnetic in ways they can't explain or replicate. The very person they thought would come crawling back is now so far ahead that crawling isn't even an option anymore. Because what you did next, the move you made after their betrayal, it wasn't just genius, it was inevitable. You see, they thought they were teaching you a lesson, but what they actually did was graduate you from a school you didn't even know you were enrolled in. The University of Human Nature, the College of Strategic Silence, the Academy of Turning Pain into Power. While they were busy high-fiving each other over their successful character assassination, while they were busy comparing notes on how well they executed their plan, while they were busy feeling superior about how they handled you, you were busy becoming someone they could never handle, someone they could never predict, someone they could never contain. You didn't just disappear from their lives. You evaporated, like smoke, like a ghost they couldn't quite shake. One day you were there, trying to fix things, trying to understand, trying to save friendships that were already dead and buried. The next day, gone. Not dramatically, not with a big announcement or a public call-out. You just weren't available anymore. And that's when the real genius began. Because you see, they expected you to fight. They prepared for war. They had their defenses ready, their excuses polished, their victim narratives rehearsed. But you didn't give them a war. You gave them something much worse. You gave them irrelevance. You stopped asking why. You stopped seeking closure. You stopped trying to make sense of senseless people. Instead, you started asking better questions. Not, why did they do this to me? But what can I build from this experience? Not, how do I get them back? But how do I make sure I never need them again? Not how do I prove I'm not what they said I am, but how do I become someone so undeniably powerful that their opinions become background noise? They were waiting for you to crack. They were checking your social media religiously, waiting for the breakdown post. They were listening through mutual friends, hoping to hear that you were struggling, that you were asking about them, that you were finally feeling the weight of their absence. But instead, they heard something that made their blood run cold. They heard nothing, because you had discovered something beautiful in that silence. You had discovered that the people who matter don't need explanations, and the people who need explanations don't matter. You had discovered that some doors close not to punish you, but to redirect you toward rooms you were always meant to enter. And slowly, quietly, methodically, you began to rebuild. Not the old version of yourself. That version was too trusting, too forgiving, too willing to accept crumbs and call them bread. No, you rebuilt yourself like a fortress, beautiful from the outside, but with walls so high and foundations so deep that only the worthy could ever gain access. You started saying no to things that didn't serve you. You started saying yes to opportunities that scared the old you. You started investing in relationships that felt like sunshine instead of storm clouds. You started building a life so full, so rich, so absolutely magnetic that their absence became a gift rather than a loss. And that's when they started to notice. That's when the panic set in. Because you see, they had calculated everything except this scenario. They had prepared for tears, for begging, for public humiliation, for you to come crawling back with apologies for crimes you didn't commit. But they hadn't prepared for you to become unreachable. They hadn't prepared for you to evolve past the need for their validation. The first sign of their panic was the sudden interest in your life. The checking of your profiles increased. The questions to mutual friends became more frequent. "How's she doing?" they'd ask, trying to sound casual, trying to hide the fact that your silence was eating them alive. "She seems really happy," came the responses, and that's when the knife twisted, because happy meant you were fine without them. Happy meant their impact on your life was temporary. Happy meant they were forgettable, but it got worse for them, because you weren't just happy. You were glowing. You were thriving in ways that made their betrayal look like the best thing that ever happened to you. Every photo was evidence of a life they were no longer part of. Every success was proof that their predictions about your downfall were dead wrong. Every smile was a slap in the face of everyone who bet against you. They started hearing your name in rooms they couldn't enter. They started seeing you at events they weren't invited to. They started watching you build connections with people they wished they knew, create opportunities they wished they had, live a life they suddenly realized they wanted to be part of but no longer had access to. And the beautiful thing? You weren't doing any of this to spite them. You weren't posting cryptic messages. You weren't trying to make them jealous. You weren't playing their games at all. You were just living authentically, powerfully, unapologetically. And that authentic power was more threatening to them than any revenge plot could ever be. Because you see, when you're genuinely happy, when you're genuinely successful, when you're genuinely at peace, it exposes everyone around you who isn't. Your light became a mirror that reflected their darkness back at them. Your growth became a measuring stick that made their stagnation obvious. Your evolution became a reminder of everything they chose not to become. They started to realize that They hadn't just lost a friend. They had lost access to someone who was always going to be special. Someone who was always going to rise. Someone who was always going to inspire others and create magic wherever they went. They had had front row seats to greatness, and they had voluntarily given up their tickets. The regret started creeping in, didn't it? The what-if questions that haunted their quiet moments. What if they had been better friends? What if they had celebrated you instead of competing with you? What if they had lifted you up instead of tearing you down? What if they had chosen love over envy, support over sabotage, loyalty over lies? But here's the thing about time. It doesn't rewind. Here's the thing about bridges. Once you burn them, you can't just wish the ashes back into wood. Here's the thing about trust. Once you break it with someone who valued it, you don't get to decide when or if it gets rebuilt. And you? You had moved so far beyond the need for their apologies that even if they came crawling back with genuine remorse, even if they admitted everything, even if they begged for forgiveness, it wouldn't matter. Not because you were bitter. Bitterness requires you to still care. Not because you were angry. Anger requires them to still have power over your emotions. But because you had outgrown the version of yourself that needed their validation. You had discovered something they would never understand. That the highest form of revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. It's building a life so beautiful, so fulfilling, so absolutely magnificent that their absence becomes a footnote in your success story rather than a chapter in your tragedy. They thought they were writing your ending, but what they actually did was force you to write a new beginning. A better beginning. A beginning where you were the author, the director, the star, and the audience, all at once. A beginning where their opinions didn't have editorial rights over your narrative. And now you're living in the sequel they never saw coming. The one where the person they tried to destroy becomes the person everyone wants to know. The one where their betrayal becomes your biggest blessing, wrapped in the ugliest package. The one where you don't just survive their sabotage, you use it as fertilizer for a garden they'll never be invited to walk through. You want to know what real power looks like. It's not screaming. It's not exposing them on social media. It's not gathering an army to fight your battles. Real power is becoming so magnetic, so successful, so absolutely untouchable that they have to watch your victory parade from behind, their own prison bars of regret. Real power is making them realize that trying to dim your light only taught you how to become the sun. Because here's what happened while they were busy congratulating themselves on their betrayal. You were busy becoming someone they could never afford to lose again. But the beautiful tragedy is that they already had their chance, and they chose to waste it. They had access to your loyalty, your authenticity, your genuine care, your rare energy, and they treated it like garbage they couldn't wait to throw away. Now they get to live with the consequences of that choice. Now they get to watch from the outside as other people experience the version of you they took for granted. Now they get to see what they could have had, what they should have protected, what they were too blind to value when it was freely given. And the thing that haunts them the most, you're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not plotting revenge or spending sleepless nights thinking about what they did. You're just thriving, genuinely, authentically, powerfully thriving. And that indifference, that complete lack of emotional investment in their existence, that's what breaks them. Because being hated means you still matter. Being ignored means you never did. You've reached that divine level of detachment where their names don't make your heart race anymore. Where seeing them doesn't trigger fight or flight responses, where their opinions about you hold the same weight as a stranger's review of a movie you've never seen. You've transcended their ability to affect you, and that transcendence is the most terrifying thing they've ever witnessed. They scroll through your life now like they're reading about a celebrity they used to know personally. There's awe mixed with regret, admiration mixed with envy, pride mixed with profound loss. Because you're not just doing well, you're doing extraordinarily. You're not just happy, you're luminous. You're not just successful, you're inspirational. Every achievement you post is a reminder of what they lost. Every smile in your photos is evidence that their absence didn't dim your light. It revealed how bright you could shine without their shadows. Every new connection you make, every opportunity that comes your way, every moment of joy you experience is proof that they were never the blessing in your life they thought they were. They were the lesson. And what a lesson it was. You learned that some people will love you as long as you stay small enough to fit into their comfort zone. You learned that some people will support you as long as your success doesn't make their mediocrity obvious. You learned that some people will celebrate you as long as you don't outshine them in rooms they want to own. But most importantly, you learned that you don't need anyone's permission to become who you were always meant to be. You don't need their approval to take up space. You don't need their validation to know your worth. You don't need their friendship to build a beautiful life. In fact, their betrayal revealed that you're stronger without them than you ever were with them. They created their own nightmare. They turned someone who would have loved them forever into someone who doesn't think about them at all. They turned someone who would have had their back into someone whose back they can't even see anymore because you're so far ahead. They turned a loyal friend into a cautionary tale they have to live with for the rest of their lives. And now, when people ask them about you, they have to choose their words carefully. They can't trash talk someone who's obviously thriving. They can't spread lies about someone whose life is an open book of success and happiness. They can't paint you as the problem when you're out here solving problems and building empires. So they're forced to speak your name with respect, even though it tastes like regret in their mouths. You've become the one that got away, but not romantically. Strategically, you're the connection they lost, the energy they can't replace, the authenticity they'll spend years trying to find in other people. You're the friend they compare everyone else to, knowing deep down that the comparison always falls short. You're the standard they set, but will never reach again. Because here's what they didn't understand when they made their choice. People like you don't come around often. Your combination of loyalty and strength, vulnerability and wisdom, kindness and boundaries, that's rare, that's precious. That's the kind of energy that elevates everyone around it, and they voluntarily removed themselves from your orbit. Now they're floating in space, cold and isolated, watching you be the sun for other people's solar systems. They're seeing other people receive the warmth they rejected, the light they tried to dim, the energy they took for granted. And they can't do anything about it except live with the knowledge that they had everything they're now desperately seeking, and they threw it away. The funniest part, they thought they were teaching you about loyalty, but they taught you about boundaries. They thought they were showing you your place, but they showed you your power. They thought they were writing your story, but they gave you the pen and stepped out of the narrative entirely. You don't wish them harm, because harm requires emotional investment, and they're not worth that currency anymore. You don't wish them well because that implies you think about their well-being, and you don't. You simply wish them nothing. They exist in the same category as everyone else you've outgrown, irrelevant to your present, invisible in your future, and remembered only as a chapter that taught you how much better the story gets when toxic characters write their selves out. And that's the most beautiful part of all. You didn't have to fight them. You didn't have to expose them. You didn't have to get revenge. You just had to become yourself, fully and unapologetically, and that was enough to make their betrayal backfire in ways they never could have imagined. They played you behind your back, thinking they were playing chess. But your next move was stepping off their board entirely and creating your own game. A game where you make the rules, where you choose the players, where you control the outcome. A game they'll never be invited to play, but one they'll always wish they could join, because in the end, the best revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. It's building a life so magnificent that their absence becomes a gift rather than a loss. It's becoming so successful that their betrayal looks like divine redirection. It's rising so high that their attempts to bring you down look like the launching pad they never meant to provide. You turned their betrayal into your breakthrough, their rejection into your redirection, their ending into your beginning. And that's not just genius, that's legendary.